What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Aaron Nix, and I am back to discuss AEW's Women's Title Tournament Eliminator Japanese bracket. I think that's right. So basically, they're having a tournament right now. 16 women involved, 8 on the United States side, 8 on the Japanese side. And I'm going to cover the Japanese side of things, because ultimately they're kind of drawing out the American side of things very slowly, and yeah, it looks like it's going to take quite a while for them to come to a conclusion on that side of things. However, they had all 4 of the first round matches from the Japanese women's side of the bracket on AEW's YouTube channel. Now, a lot of people I noticed were coming out and saying, oh, I don't like this, it should be on TV. Do I think they should have much more women's wrestling on TV? Of course. I think their women's division is garbage. I think this is actually living proof of that, because they've had to go to an entirely different country to find 8 women to fill out this tournament. And that's nothing against the women who are involved. They're all fantastic and fairly legit, particularly Layla Hirsch. See what I did there? But ultimately, these are 8 women who aren't necessarily really that well employed by AEW. These are women who make their name elsewhere, particularly in Japan, of course. Stardom, Joshi Pro, Wave, DDT. Fantastic. It's great to see them. I just would have liked to have seen a bit more talent that was kind of homegrown from AEW instead of consistently going elsewhere to find talent. And they've even done that closer to home. Thunder Rosa, Serena Deeb, those are NWA talents. You know, Tainara Conti is starting to really rise through the ranks. She's a WWE NXT talent. Just saying. I would like to see a lot more effort. And let's be honest, you've had nearly 2 years to get this right. But I'm not here to spend all of this video slagging off AEW's terrible booking of women's wrestling. You can see that for yourself. And if you can't see that one, ultimately, you must be Stevie Wonder. So, hi, Stevie. Lovely to know that you are not watching this, but definitely listening to it. Now, the Japanese women's side of the bracket was very interesting to me. There were 3 names I recognised, 2 in particular, of course, in Emi Sakura and Aya Kong. The third that I did actually recognise was somebody that I remember speaking about on the podcast before we really started branching out into the YouTube division of things, and that was Yuki Sakazaki, who I thought was freaking adorable. But so many of these Japanese women's wrestlers are, I don't want to sound cretinous, but they are very cute, you know? They're very adorable. Oh, I just want to pinch your cheeks. They are kind of freakishly adorable, actually, in some ways, but that's also part of the culture, and I understand that comes with a lot of different things, a lot of nuances, and they have a different way of looking at things. To explain this to some of our American listeners, there's this thing called culture, and when you go abroad, you tend to discover different cultures. There's a lot of Americans right now say, how dare you speak to me like that, you piece of shit fucking Arab. You're right, you're absolutely right. So Yuki Sakazaki opened up proceedings. She took on a young lady by the name of Mei Seruga, who I have not seen anything of before. Apparently she has the cutest smile in Japanese women's wrestling, and I have to say, yeah, she does. She's pretty adorable. But they're all very, very adorable, except for Aya Kong, who looks like she's going to quite literally rip everyone's limbs off, and rightfully so when you are built like that. But we'll get to Aya Kong in a moment. But I was actually really fascinated by this matchup. Saruga and Yuki Sakazaki, they don't look like women who are going to be too physically imposing, but actually, on the flip side of things, very physical, very violent. I was very fascinated by Saruga's kind of over-the-top sensuality, the way that she would spring off the ropes and then not actually do a move, just go woo. I just thought very colourful, very Japanese in a lot of ways. You know, I don't want to come across by using racial stereotypes, but you know, when you play things like Pokemon and stuff like that, and you watch anime, there is that kind of very sort of bright, sparkly, wide-eyed appeal, and she seemed to channel that quite nicely, in my opinion. And I actually really liked this matchup. It was very physical. It started off kind of very good-natured, but as is the case with a lot of Japanese women's wrestling, it normally tends to get pretty violent. One thing I really liked is, when I saw these women, I thought, okay, they're very cute looking, but how physical are they going to be? Actually, they laid their shit in much harder, and that is testament to Japanese wrestling and the way they train men and women over there, because ultimately they do take it very seriously. So even though they might afford you the opportunity to be crazy and out there like a Toriano or a Marquito Ito, at the same time, you better be able to back that shit up. You better be able to lay your shit in. You better be able to fucking take an ass kicking, because they aren't going to suffer fools gladly. And these women are a fine example of that. Shout out to Yuki Sakazaki's tights, by the way. Very Prince of Persia, Sands of Time-esque, and I really enjoy that, particularly as a man who is obviously of Middle Eastern descent. I just liked it. I thought she looked cool. She looked like a very cute genie in a lot of ways. But I also remember her very fondly, obviously, when she was originally in AEW, and thinking she could have a bright future if she can tap into the US market. This match was good. It was physical, had some high-flying ability to it. One thing that I really loved more than anything was Seruga's ability to bridge. Do you remember the Last Chance read that Austin Aries used to employ as a finisher? We kind of bridge back and put them in a choke. She had something very similar, but then she would like very slowly bridge completely up, which, by the way, takes an astonishing amount of neck and core strength. I cannot even begin to imagine how you would try to do that. You know, there are guys I know who are like parkour experts who would struggle to do something like that. The woman's obviously made of some sort of elastic that hasn't been founded yet by modern society, and that's fair. But then she would like put in this insane kind of leg lock and then go back down again, and it was just very unique and very different, and I liked it. And the pacing was very typical of a Japanese matchup. It would build and build and build, then it would just go crazy, and then sometimes you'd cut the crescendo off a little bit and then build back to that crescendo. It was nice. I enjoyed it. Nice little opener. It was very obvious that AEW wanted to make sure that the women who may be known to their audience a little bit more obviously would go over, because that would make quite a difference. Me personally, if I had been booking it, I would have gone for something a little bit different, because this is an opportunity to expose different names and different talents to people. Now, ultimately, they're still getting exposure because they're on the AEW YouTube channel. But it would have been quite nice if you could bring some of these women over for TV, and maybe they're going to do that in the future. Obviously, COVID makes things very difficult. By the way, I really enjoyed the setup. I quite like the small little warehouse with a few of the, what I would assume would be their young lions. I think Excalibur at one point on the English commentary called them a socially distanced crowd, which I thought was very amusing, because there's like literally 3 women at ringside. So, and by the way, he said they were socially distanced, and at one point they spent half the match banging on the canvas. Doesn't sound like socially distanced to me, Mr. Excalibur, but hey, what do I know about COVID, etc.? I am just one lowly individual ranting into the void that is YouTube, and hoping that some of you people will enjoy this. Now, Emi Sakura is obviously somebody that we know very well. She is the Queen-inspired wrestler of 25 years. What an amazing career she's had. 25 years in the wrestling business, still only 44, so arguably could definitely go for a few more years, and she's certainly in shape, and she can certainly go. She took on a woman by the name of Veni. When Veni came out, she was wearing a kimono, which is a very traditional and very beautiful Japanese garment of sorts, like a kind of robe. And I thought, that reminds me of Hana Kimura, that's nice, you know, but maybe it's a reference to it. Turns out actually it was. It was actually the kimono that belonged to her, and it was actually gifted to her by Hana Kimura's mother, who of course was also a famous wrestler in her own right. So it was lovely to see that she was represented, and I must admit, I kind of took a take at that point, and I sat down and thought, yeah, she probably would have been in this, and she would have been fantastic. And it is very, very, very tragic that she's not with us. And I suppose I should take this as an opportunity to just remind people that you're allowed to have opinions, and I don't mind if you want to leave abuse in my comments. Lord knows I get a lot of it, particularly over at Sly Fox Sports, but just try and think about what you say to people and the effects that might have on them. And ultimately, let's try and remember Hana Kimura the right way by moving forward and trying to be better people. But Veni took on Emi Sakura, and I immediately fell in love with this woman because she was absolutely fantastic. Her look was so different to everybody else. Very much like Hana Kimura, actually, when she first came out. And obviously, she very much lent a lot of that to her mixed race heritage. I believe she was half Indonesian. And Veni looked very different as well. Really, really cool looking woman. Quite tall. Quite menacing, a little bit dark actually in the way she came out. Very kind of smooth, very theatrical. Everything felt like it was very deliberate as well. And the match was fantastic. Emi Sakura, of course, you know she's going to work well. Now, I immediately found myself rooting for this young lady called Veni, and ultimately, that's probably testament to how good she is in the ring and how good she was at getting me psychologically and emotionally invested in this product. Her wrestling style was fantastic. It was unorthodox. It was unique. It was strange. Because at 1 minute she's kind of like, right at the beginning of the match, they go for a lock-up. She kind of matrixes out and then does this kind of cheeky little wiggle and you think, that's cool. As soon as you've done something that I haven't seen before, immediately I'm going to be intrigued because you just don't see stuff like that very often. Very cool, very fluid, almost snake-like in the ring, which was very cool. But like I say, she would go from like being very physical, forearms and stuff, to all of a sudden just like flying up in the air, doing moonsaults and stuff. And I thought, oh cool, she did the Arahari moonsault, which of course people will know. It's very popular with Hangman Page. He's very much popularised that move in general, if I'm being honest, as has Kota Ibushi, if I am not mistaken. But again, great match. And the more and more it went on, the more I thought the Veni was going to get an upset. And I think ultimately, I would have liked to have seen Veni win because it's Emi Sakura that comes out on top, and that's not a problem. At the end of the match, the only thing that really let it down for me was the fact that her kind of dragon sleeper hold, it looked very lackluster and a bit all over the place, and she then puts her down with a Tiger Driver, which is fine. I've got no problem with that, but I would have liked to have seen Veni win. I think this was a great opportunity to put over the younger, more eccentric talents, and they didn't do that. They opted for the more ring-savvy veterans, and I think that's fine, and I imagine a lot of it comes down to who can travel and who can't. Obviously, a lot of these women have commitments with promotions that maybe aren't going to be happy with them globe-trotting around for 6 months and not actually appearing. I don't know, and obviously a lot of it depends on COVID protocols and how things change going forward. It's a very undecisive world that we live in, but I must admit, I was a little bit disappointed Emi Sakura won. I really wanted this Veni woman to win. I was very, 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 very excited about what she brought to the ring. She looked very different to anything I've seen before, and I feel like her mannerisms and her presentation will actually get over really well in the Western world, and particularly the North American environment of wrestling. So fingers crossed we're going to see a lot more of her. And also, from seeing someone like that, it intrigued me enough that I thought, you know what, I want to start watching a bit more of Japanese women's wrestling, particularly Stardom and DDT and stuff like that, because they've obviously got some incredibly talented individuals. And although there's so much wrestling to watch, it would be nice to really dedicate more time to seeing this more regularly and not making this viewing of AEW's show a one-off. So Emi Sakura picks up the win. Really liking the Queen references, by the way. No Tash this time. Come on, man. No Tash? Well, I've got no time. I would have liked to have seen the Tash, but she still came out dressed as a queen, and I immediately got the reference. I was like, very good. So the match that I probably had my eyes on the most was Marquito Ito versus Rio Mizunami. Now, I recognise both of these women for different reasons. I vaguely recognised Rio from, not that Rio, this Rio, from a very brief venture into AEW. But I recognise Marquito Ito for being an individual who upset Jim Cornette on Twitter. Now, obviously, she's very cute and very beautiful and all those things that go with it. She's apparently a Japanese idol singer, which is very similar, I imagine, in a lot of ways to K-pop, in the sense of, she was part of like a kind of a girl group, so to speak, or a girl band, as I think they would say in the UK. Obviously, I'm not very hot on that music, just look at me. But, obviously very talented, but I was very keen to see what Marquito Ito could do, and if she could back up a lot of the, shall we say, bluster that was thrown around online. Now, I have to say, the fact that AEW fans are supporting this woman solely on the fact that she upset Jim Cornette or triggered Jim Cornette in some way, and I don't even think she really triggered him. I think he was actually having a bit of fun with it. I did see the tweet where she tweeted back in and called herself the deity of piss and shit. I have to say that if you're kind of supporting her based on the fact that she upset Jim Cornette, come on. The guy can't live rent-free in your head forever. He really can't. I was fascinated by this matchup, and I was told that apparently she had a cast iron head, which was used to great effect during this match. If there was one woman you probably would have had nailed on to win, it would have been Marquito Ito. But Rio Mizunami had other ideas and was obviously much more physical. From the get-go, it was very clear that there was a story to be told here, and the story was that Mizunami is obviously a heavy hitter, and that Marquito Ito is such an adorable, cute little girl, and she takes a forearm and starts crying, which I thought was kind of funny, to be honest. But the match actually wasn't too bad. But I got to be honest, if from my perspective, this felt like the weakest of the 4 matches. It was very pantomime heavy. And I don't mind that to a certain extent. I guarantee that AEW fans as a whole, and I imagine they'll let me know in the comments, they probably thought this was the most entertaining match because they seem to be more into comedic wrestling. Now, I don't mind comedic wrestling, but I still like to take more enjoyment out of a more serious brand of wrestling. Case in point, TJP and Josh Alexander had an amazing match this week on Impact. That's just more my cup of tea. But I still enjoyed it for what it was. I just think it was a little bit too over the top with some of the comedic elements. And that's fine, to be honest. That's what Marquito Ito brings. She is unbelievably cute. No doubt she's earned that moniker of being the cutest in all of professional wrestling. And it's very cool that she trains and works alongside Chris Brooks, of course, who I know quite well from the British independent wrestling scene. And we're all very proud of Chris Brooks and everything that he's doing over at DDT Pro, representing himself first and foremost, and also United Kingdom and that standard of wrestling. Just fantastic to see him living his best life, if I'm being honest. But it's Mizunami who actually picks up the win here. And I felt like that was probably the right decision. The problem with someone like Marquito Ito isn't that she isn't fantastic and hasn't got a place in wrestling. But as soon as she gets onto the more Western side of things, I'm going to need to see a bit more. And also, if you're going to be in the ring with strong, physical, powerful, scrappy women like Thunder Rosa and Serena Deeb and even a Nyla Rose, for instance, oh boy, you're going to have to bring more to the table than, I'm going to lure you in by crying, because why am I supposed to believe at any point that someone wouldn't just murder her? So, but at the same time, it was nice to see Rio Mizunami. She's actually really good in her own right, very entertaining. I loved her mannerisms, the over-the-top kind of pit bull presentation. She felt like a female Rick Steiner in a lot of ways. I don't know why that came to me, but I actually thought she was really entertaining, and everything that she did, from the over-the-top way of taking off the chain and stuff like that, that for me was very representative of everything that I'm taught when I go to wrestling training. I'm told to show out and really, ham up the expressions and things like that. And she was very good at doing that, actually. I thought she was one of the more enjoyable parts of this entire show, so credit to her. And ultimately, she comes out with the win. So Marquito Ito, turns out, is fairly credible in the ring, as well as fairly credible at winding up Jim Cornette. So full credit to you, I suppose, madam. Now, the main event, so to speak, was Aya Kong, who we all recognise, versus Rin Kadokura. Rin Kadokura, bless her, very much felt like the most vanilla of all the wrestlers. There just didn't seem to be anything that really stood out. Sorry, she just seemed a bit boring. Apparently, she's one half of the Wave Tag Team Champions. Again, no clue, but thank you for informing me, Mr. Excalibur. She took on Aya Kong, of course, who is a fucking legend. Aya Kong has been in wrestling, right, 34 years. She's had a career that is 34 years long. Now, to put that in context, to really blow your mind, Aya Kong's entire wrestling career is only 2 years younger than me. That's amazing. When I was 2 years old, she was wrestling. That's astonishing to me. She started all the way back in the days of when All Japan Pro had a women's bracket, and I'm not sure if they still do have a women's division, but I know that it was quite vaunted back then. And the fact that she started back then, that's amazing to me. We celebrate guys like Jushin Thunder Liger so much, and Minoru Suzuki, of how long they've been in this business, and it almost feels like we've kind of let Aya Kong slip through the cracks a little bit. And maybe that's just because obviously pretty much the majority of her career has been made in Japan, but still, it is very cool to see her as a legend. Now, she definitely feels like she's slowing down a bit. I actually likened her to Vader a little bit when I saw her. I thought, oh, cool, fair enough. This match was basically her kicking the living shit out of Kadokura, which was actually quite abusive to watch. She just bait the shite out of her. This is certainly not a woman who gets paid hourly. Yeah, she came out. She also came out of a bin. Maybe someone can inform me as to what the fuck that was all about. She had a metal bin and put it in a corner. I was like, huh. Fair enough. But she pretty much dissected Kadokura in this match. And it was quite cool to see that Rin Kadokura had kind of, she got some comebacks and she kept coming back. But ultimately, she got squashed. Let's be honest, she did. She got murdered. The pile driver looked savage. She got hit with I believe it was a fall-away elbow drop from the top rope that eventually done her in. But the move which really got me was when she just sat on her face. I was like, ow. Very much Rikishi-esque. You remember when he used to do the old Rikishi sit-down when someone tried to roll him up? She just didn't fucking hold back on it at all, and I'm surprised that woman had any air or stamina left after that to continue, but she did. The only thing I will say about Rin Kadokura is she could obviously take a fucking shit kicking with the best of them and still come out looking like she's still alive, and I guess that's probably the only plus you can take from this. But you know, Io Kong, that was very much a demonstration more so than a match, I think, to kind of show off, yeah, this is the powerhouse legend. And actually, it should be very interesting because in the semi-finals of the Japanese bracket, she's going to face Rio Mizunami, who is kind of the only other real heavy hitter in this division. So I am really excited about the prospect of meaty horse battle in Japan in the women's division. Kong versus Mizunami. I'm sure somebody will come up with some King Kong Godzilla reference at some point. If it's not Excalibur, it'll be some other fucking mark. But I'll leave that up to you lot. I must admit, this was a good hour of TV. I enjoyed it. It was easy to watch. It was fun. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. It was just a cheeky little Brucey bonus. Something else for you guys to check out. A little bit of extra content. If you'd like me to cover more stuff, maybe you've got some suggestions actually of what you'd like me to cover. Maybe you want me to start watching Ring of Honor and covering that. I do actually have a fair amount of time on my hands, despite all my independent artist shit that I've got going on. So ultimately, if you do want WrestlePlug and myself in particular to start covering some other wrestling, you gotta let us know in the comments. You gotta interact with us. But from myself, Aaron Nix, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this Brucey bonus, and I will catch you very soon for more content from the WrestlePlug.